All right, in this lesson, we're going to talk about rendering, textures, and materials. And this scene you could download, I'll put a link in the description with a zip file with everything you need to follow along for this lesson. All right, so once you open this file, you'll see that there are just some geometry. We have like a basic like bottle, mug, and a plant with some like, I guess you could say that's dirt in there. All right, so let's get to figuring out how we could make this look like actual objects in the real world. So the first thing we need to do is get a light source. The fastest and easiest way to get a light source is to use an image and map it to a big dome or like a big sphere and use that as a light source. And the way it works is like, imagine having like a big dome or sphere that's like made out of LED screens, and it's just like shining light from whatever the image is on it. So the way we create that is at the very top in your shelf area here, you have your different little tabs you can click on with different like sculpting tools and animation tools and stuff. We're actually going to click on Arnold. And you might be wondering, like, why is that called Arnold? Well, Arnold is the name of the rendering software that ships with Maya, and it was developed a long time ago, I think at Sony ImageWorks, and Maya bought it, but it's called Arnold. And to create that big spherical light that I'm talking about, we're going to click on this. After you click on Arnold, we're going to click on this fourth button over from the left. It's this, looks like a little sphere with like yellow and white on the bottom. So if you click that, you can see it creates this like giant, if I zoom out, this giant sphere around our scene, and it's kind of see-through or whatever. And if I were to render this and see what it looks like, we could do that. So let's go ahead and click on, in the Arnold tab, there's this little like YouTube looking icon. It's like this play button thing. If you click that, we get a little render. And right now this dome light is just white. So we're getting this very like overcast looking render. And if I zoom in, it updates here in the little render view. So if I kind of pan over, we could really get close in there. And it's pretty cool. Like, I think, out the gate, it looks pretty sweet. Like, we're getting, so this little like shadowing that you see, these like soft shadows around the objects, that's because of the overcast kind of lighting look. So there's no hard shadows. And the technical term for that is called ambient occlusion. So when you have a tight corner and not a lot of light is getting in there, the light's getting occluded, the ambient light, so it's called ambient occlusion. And you can actually use your mouse wheel to zoom in here. It gets pixelated if you zoom in real far, but then you can use your alt middle mouse and kind of pan around in that too. But I like to just kind of manipulate the perspective view and watch it update. So that's pretty cool. So the next thing we're going to do is let's set our project. So let's go File, Set Project, and set it. Let's see. I'm going to go to my Intro to CG, and here we go. And I'll go to Summer, and this is the week 6, I think. Nope, that's not. Bear with me here. Let's see. Oh, it's on the desktop. Sorry. Week 6. All right, cool. Yeah. So we're just going to set it to week 6 summer and just hit set. So now Maya knows to look in that folder every time you want to get an image or a texture or whatever. So let's, just because I have limited screen space here, I don't have 2 monitors, I'm going to close this render view. Just close it. And then let's go to Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. And this is where we work on textures, materials, and all that stuff. So if we click under, there's this tab here There's materials, textures, utilities, all that stuff. We're going to click on lights. And we have this sky dome light. And I'm going to use my middle mouse button to drag this down to here. I guess we don't really need to do that, but this is if we want to connect different things. But I guess that's fine. We can middle mouse drag that down to here, and then this is the same thing. If I click on it up here, it's selecting it. And if I click on it here, it's selecting it. And we see its attributes right here in the attribute editor if we click on it. If I click off of it, or if I click on one of these objects, that stuff goes away. But if I click back on it, now we have the color. So we're actually going to map an image to this color channel. So again, if I click this, I could adjust the color on it. We're actually going to click on this little checkered board button just to the right of that color. And then we're going to want to pick a file because we want to map an image file to that dome. So let's click on File. So you can see what happened here is we have our dome light. We have this file. The color from the file is going into the color of the dome light. Isn't that cool? So let's click on this file now. So I click on that file. Now I have a place where I could choose the actual image. I click on this little folder. And then let's go up. It's not in source images. It's just right there. It's this Studio Garden EXR file. And you can see it's an image there of like a backyard or something. So pick on Studio Garden 4K EXR, hit open. So now this image is going to be mapped onto that dome light. So now if I render this, so if I go back and click on that little render under the Arnold tab, that little YouTube looking icon, hit render. Now we're starting to see some hard shadows and some cool like highlights on the objects. And that's because that if I look at that image, there's a sun casting that light and giving you those hard shadows. And now if we kind of move the hypershade out of the way, and we could kind of zoom out a little bit, and we could see that the image is mapped onto that dome behind there. And I think this image was taken with a 360-degree camera, which is cool because that way you could kind of, it's almost like these objects are in this scene right now. So like if this would be the same technique used, like if you filmed something outside and you wanted to make like a CG creature, you know, composited over top of it, you could do it with this technique basically. Cool, so let's save our scene. I'm going to do File, Save Scene As, so I don't save over that starting scene. Cool, so the next thing we wanted to do is actually start assigning some unique materials to these objects. So the first thing, let's go ahead and make this bottle, make it look like it's made out of glass. So again, I'll bring up my hypershade, and if you close this by accident, it's fine. All you gotta do is go to Windows, Rendering Editors, and then go to Hypershade. Then it pops up. So the last thing we worked on in this like little workspace was that dome light. So we don't really need to mess with the dome light anymore. We could kind of get this stuff out of here, and the way you do that, there's this little square button right here with like these little stars that clears your workspace. It doesn't delete anything. It just gets things out of this little workspace. So let's create a new material for this glass bottle. So we could right click in here and anywhere in this workspace, right click, go create node. This little window pops open asking you like, okay, like what do you want to create? We want to create a AI standard surface. So it's Arnold, I forgot what the I stands for, honestly, and standard surface. So AI. So I'm going to, in this little search box, I'm going to start typing AI, not SI, AI standard. Can't type while I'm making a video. So it's like starts to filter all your choices. Now we have AI standard hair, AI standard surface, and standard volume. We're going to want to go ahead and do surface. So click surface. And you can see it pops up in our workspace. Now we could close this, or yeah, let's close it. Cool, so let's zoom in. I'll use my mouse wheel to zoom in on this standard surface. And let's name this like bottle underscore surface. And then if you click on it, over on the right, next to where it says bottle surface here, there's this presets button. So we could click that, and there's a preset for glass. And it's asking, do we want to, replace the current material or like blend it a certain percentage? I'm just going to hit replace, the very top one. So you can see this little preview looks kind of like glass a little bit. But what we got to do now is actually select this bottle in our viewport, and then come back over here. And I'm not going to, if I click on this, it deselects the bottle. So I'm going to go back and select it. But if you come over here and right click on it, and sometimes you have to try right clicking in different spots. That's so super weird. Like right click. Yeah, maybe like I had to like right click off of it and then right click on it. But you pick the top one, which is assign material to viewport selection. So then you can see in our viewport, it turns clear. And if I click off of it, we see the wireframe, but it's just clear. So now if I look at my render, we have our glass bottle there, which is pretty sweet. So if I zoom in and kind of just tumble around, we get our bottle. We're having some cool like refractions, and there's a little bit of reflection happening too. See how it's refracting that stuff behind there? So it's pretty awesome. So with just a few clicks, we can make that bottle look like it's glass. And let's go ahead and save, so Control S. All right, let's do one for the mug. And I think I closed my Hypershade, so I'll go back to Windows, Rendering Editors, Hypershade. And I'm not going to need this bottle surface here anymore in this workspace. So I can again hit this little button to clear it, clear the workspace. We could then right click in here and go create node. And again, we're going to click in this little filter box and type in AI standard. And there we go, AI standard surface, this middle one. So whenever we, like 99% of the time, you're going to use an AI standard surface when you're rendering with Arnold and Maya. Close that window. Let's zoom in on this, and then I'll call this like mug surface. And then again, we'll go over here where it says presets, and we'll click that. And I think there's one for ceramic, and there is. So let's hit replace. And then let's click our mug, and then let's right click on this mug surface and go assign material to viewport selection. Cool, so let's look at our render and see what we have. So let's zoom in on that mug and kind of, so we're seeing some reflections in the mug now. And it's looking a lot like ceramic, which is cool. And we could change the color on it too. So like if we go back to our Hypershade and click on that mug surface, right now the color is like this kind of grayish white. I mean, we could make it like blue. Clicked on that color and just chose that blue. And then, yeah, I get like kind of a cooler effect. I think that's pretty cool. Sweet. So we got our blue ceramic mug. The next thing, let's work on this potted plant. So we need this part to be like kind of like a red clayish color. So let's go down to our hypershade, and we could clear the workspace by hitting this little button here. Right click, create node, and again in the little filter box, type in AI standard surface. Close that, and we'll zoom out a little bit here. And I'm going to double click here and call this clay surface. And with that selected, we'll go over to the attribute editor here and click on presets. And I think there's one for clay, which awesome, there is. Hit replace. And it's really red, so we might actually want to change that. But let's go ahead and select our like potted plant thing, and right click on this clay surface and go assign material to viewport selection, and it turns this like dark red. But now when we look at our render, again, I think that's too much of a bright red. I was thinking more of like baseball clay or like a brick maybe. So if I click on this clay surface, my hypershade, and I just moved my render view over to where I could kind of see it. We could click on this color and change it. So we could go maybe less saturated and maybe a little darker. And I think if you click off, it just finalizes it. Cool, so we got that. So again, let's hit save, so Control S. So let's make one for the dirt, and I think I might have an image in that folder. Let me see if I look in my desktop. All right, this is not being useful for me. Let's do go. Here we go, desktop. So we have, let's see. Yeah, I don't think I have a dirt image for that. So we'll just kind of make it like a dark rubbery kind of look, so it's like really dull. So let's minimize that. So let's again clear our workspace. We'll right click and go create node and start typing in AI standard surface. There we go, the middle one. Close that. So let's call this like dirt surface. And let's go to the presets. If you have that selected, if you go to presets, let's go to, I think there's one for rubber, and hit replace. And let's select our, I'm sorry, I'm clicking on the image. If I select our dirt there, and then right click on this dirt surface and hit apply material to viewport selection. Now we can look and see. So it's kind of gray, so let's make that like pretty black. Oh, it's like assigned to the table. Not what I wanted to happen. The table should have the Lambert. So let me just explain what's happening. I think somehow that maybe let me close this viewport render thing. Let's open that again and make sure that's what's happening. Oh, I think what happened was I clicked on it now. So if I click on this dirt surface, it should, okay. So click on the dirt surface, and then change the color. That's where I was making my mistake. So it looks kind of like black slime, which is obviously not what we're going for, but we could change. So these little shiny highlights, that's called the specular highlight. So we could change that. We could put this roughness up a little higher, and it looks a little bit more like a really fine dirt, I guess, but we could leave it like that for now. So let's save again, Control S. So now we want to do the actual leaves. So let's clear our workspace here, hit the little button, right click, create node, AI standard surface. Oops, I'm not, I have to click on this. And let's call this plant surface. And as far as a preset goes, I'm not going to actually use a preset. Let's kind of build our own material by adjusting some settings rather than going with a preset, because I don't think there is a plant preset to go off of. I've tried using wax, but it's not a good starting point. We might be able to try skin, actually. I think there's a skin. Yeah. Let's try the skin one. If it doesn't work, we delete it and make a different one. So let's try it. So skin, hit replace. It's going to be pink, but then we could change those colors. So to select the plant, over on the left side in the outliner, there's this plant group, but it's the whole thing. We just want the actual like plant life part, right? So like if I click this little plus sign next to plant, then we have all these leaves and the pot and the stem and the dirt. So what we could do is just kind of select, if you hold down, I think it's Control, you could select more than one object. So I'm selecting all the leaves. I'm not going to select the pot, but I'll select the stem and these other two leaves and not the dirt. So then we could right click over here, assign this plant surface to those items, and they're going to be pink or whatever, and because that's the skin shader. So let's take a look and see what that looks like if I tumble around the scene here. So the thing with skin is it has something called subsurface scattering, and what that means is that it's simulating as if the light is penetrating below the surface of this plant and kind of bouncing around inside of it, and you get that like you see that like with like soap or candle wax or like your skin, like if you're out in the sun and the sun's behind your ear kind of lights up pinkish and like all that kind of stuff. So that's what subsurface scattering is. So let's adjust these settings and try to get something that looks more like a plant. So I'm going to click on this plant surface. And first let's change the color, because that's the first place to go. So click on plant surface, go to where it says color, and this is under the base section, and hit color. And let's change it to like a dark green. So I'll click on this green up here and then just bring this down. Not going to make a whole lot of a difference here just yet, but so I'm making mine like a kind of dark green. And then the specular highlight, let's go ahead and leave that alone. Transmission, let's leave that alone. And then scroll down to where it says subsurface and click that. So here's where we're going to change some more colors. So we're going to pick a lighter green here where this pink is. So click on green, maybe like less saturated, maybe a little bit darker. And then click off of that. And then click on this radius one, and we're going to click that and pick a even darker green. Maybe less saturated. And then go back to that first one, maybe bring down the saturation of that one as well. Let's see what we got. So I'm going to move my hypershade out of the way, and let's kind of tumble around this scene and check it out. So it's cool because if we look underneath, you can actually see where a shadow is like being cast on top of the leaf. We can actually see through the leaf and kind of get a sense of that, which is pretty neat. Still looks a little maybe oversaturated. Saturated. I'll get it right here one of these days. So I would just probably go back into those greens, maybe even that first one, and the very top one for the color, and bring down the saturation a little bit. So I think that's pretty cool. And the last one we're going to do is the table itself. So let's hit Control S to save. And let's go back to our hypershade. We can clear our workspace, right click, create node, go to our filter box there, AI standard surface. Let's call this table surface. And over on the presets, if I click on that table surface and then go to presets, I could click it and go to, there should be a brushed metal, which is pretty cool. Yeah, towards the bottom there, hit replace. And then I could select the table group in the outliner rather than picking all the little slats in that table. Click it in the outliner, it picks the whole thing. Go to where workspace in the hypershade, right click and go to assign material to viewport selection. Now we got this crazy reflective brushed metal table. Oh, I think it looks pretty cool. Maybe it's not like such a realistic table. I don't know if there would be something like that, but yeah, that's kind of like a quick intro lesson to creating materials. So what we did, we didn't really work with textures. I would say the image on the sky dome, that's a texture. So a texture is like mapping a pattern or an image or like a bumpiness, but the material itself is describing like the reflectivity, the color, whether it's see-through, whether it refracts light, all that kind of stuff. That's the material. And the lighting itself, that's the dome light. So we created a light and we created some materials. We assigned them to our different objects in Maya. All right, so that's it for this lesson. Thanks, guys.